I got hit in my neck by a shrapnel. My life were flashing in front of my eyes. Am I going to leave my daughter as a single child?
Good, Reuven? Excellent.
Go for action.
I'm just setting up this. Okay, we're good to go.
I'm 43 years old. I have 4 kids at home. And so far I've done 292 days in reserve duty. And I'm going back next week.
I'm 31 years old. My team's done around 270 days of Miluim over the last, since the start of the war.
I'm married with 2 kids. I did 250 days of reserve duty since October 7th.
I'm 30 years old, and I have served over 200 days of reserves since October 7th.
What is the biggest way reserve duty in the Israel-Hamas war has impacted your life?
The main effect is basically on the family. My daughter, for instance, last time I was called, it was Rosh Hashanah, and the next day a neighbor knocked on the door, and she was very afraid that they are being notified that something happened to me. And she started shivering, and she wouldn't open the door. Afterwards, she asked my wife, if something happened to dad and he dies, who will be notified first, us or grandma and grandpa?
I think it was one of the last few days out of, it was in total about 60, 70 days we were in duty. And in one of the last days, I get a call from my wife, and she's telling me that our child she won't sleep in her bed. She's coming to our bed every night. And it was a big setback for our child. My wife is telling me that I have to come back home. And at this moment, I'm a platoon sergeant, and I'm thinking, on one end, how can I leave my men? On the other, how can I leave my child?
I work in the unit that notifies families when their loved ones are injured or fallen. I think that through my service, and specifically through the job that I'm in and the difficult stories that I meet and deal with all the time, I have developed a truly deep appreciation for the relationships that I have with my loved ones in my life, and for really just the small things. Not to say that I would be happy to trade that for not having the experiences that I've had in the last year and a half.
I was supposed to start a startup incubator on October 8th. On the way there, October 7th happened. My whole life changed. In America, I had a very clear trajectory. Every year I was getting kind of like a raise and a better position, and I kind of knew where I was going in life in terms of my career.
During an operation, I got hit in my neck by a shrapnel. And for the first few moments when I was bleeding from my neck, and I didn't know what's going on, am I going to live or not? There were two main things going in my head. The first was, am I going to leave my daughter as a single child for the rest of her life? And the second thought was a disgrace of how did we get to such a moment as a country, and a personal disgrace. How come I am now paying the price for this?
Coming back from the last round, I was let go from my work, and that's also challenging, finding a new work at this time when I'm going back next week, and other companies are aware of the situation. It's getting harder and harder to find my next role.
We're all suffering from the same consequences of doing so many days.
And it's hard. It's getting harder and harder to come all the time. It's not getting any easier, of course, but we will continue to come, of course. It's our mission.
What was your hardest moment in reserves?
The hardest moment in reserves is actually the day after. The moment you end reserves, the day after, when you take off your uniform and you put on just normal civilian clothes like I'm wearing now, suddenly you go to feeling just like a normal person. And in Tel Aviv, let's say I'm walking, nobody knows that a day before I was defending the country, I was on dangerous missions, and suddenly here I'm just walking around like every single person. It was really, really hard the first time.
truthfully, the hardest moments were not actually when I was in reserves, but more when I had time to process at home with my friends and with my family. Someone asking me if I'm okay. Those were the moments when I had the time to actually think about whether or not I was okay and to understand that I really wasn't.
Talking to my family and my kids and learning that it's been very, very hard for them. I have two young kids, ages 4 and 2.5 years old. They can't understand. My older kids do understand it, but the youngest don't. And whenever I'm away for more than a couple of days, they go to the front door and they knock from inside out, because for them I'm there. I'm on the other side of the door because I'm returning from there, and they always knock on the door and they yell for Dad.
A few years ago, we thought doing 40 days a year is a lot. Today, we find ourselves doing 150, 200 days a year. When you do this amount of days, it doesn't matter how much aid you're going to get. At the end of the day, your child grows without you. We need more men like us to do the same. We need more men to help us and take on this amazing mission of protecting this amazing country and its people. But we need more men.
What would you want people who don't do reserves to know about reserves?
I want people to know that reserves isn't easy. Everyone I'm with, we're not professional soldiers. I have people who have kids at home, people with jobs, people who are married, girlfriends, etc. And reserves pulls you away from that life. I know people who had a baby born on my team the week before October 7th. And basically the entire first few months of their daughter's life, they weren't home.
It's a privilege to serve more than it's a duty. And as I mentioned, I'm 43 years old. I'm volunteering, and I'll continue to volunteer as much as I can do physically. When I go between the rounds, when I go back home, and I see all the fighting on the social networks and in the Knesset and all the despair and the frustration that the media shows us, I always want to go back. When you are there, you are with the best people in the world, and you are fighting for your country. And I wouldn't want to be any other place.
What was a moment from reserves that gave you hope?
Somewhere about a month after the war started, I remember being on a night shift with someone that I became very close with. And night shifts were always the same as day shifts. If you were there at night, you were working at night. And if you were there in the day, working during the day, there was never a time to rest or to stop. I was on a night shift, I think about a month and a half after the war started. And my, I guess, commander, he was standing at the entrance to the office and he was holding up a mattress and he said, "I think we can take a nap." It was like 3 a.m. and we realized that things were under control enough that we could actually take a break.
Has your perspective on your service and what you're doing in reserves changed over time?
Initially, October 7th happened. I think everyone kind of got this jolt of energy to go into reserves, to like, you had to do something. In America, people were donating money. In Israel, the reserve conscription rate was highest it's ever been. Units were turning away soldiers because so many people showed up to fight. It's been a long war. We've been at war now for a 1.5 years. Reserve units are having a much harder time to bring people back because people, like I mentioned, have families. People have kids. People have jobs. And initially, when the war started, it was really much like people basically had no other choice. They were going to come, they were going to fight. Everything else, people, no matter if you had a baby the week before, that goes to the side. Now, a 1.5 years in, especially when the war's kind of prolonged and unfortunately there doesn't seem like there's a clear end in sight, it's a bit harder.
I've been doing reserve for more than 20 years now. In this war, I've noticed and I've learned how important it is to have a bigger army and more soldiers. I see the urgency for that, and that's the reason that even when I go back home between the rounds, I'm working. I joined a civil movement called the HaMiluimnikum. We are working tirelessly to push and to recruit as many soldiers as possible for the army. So in between the rounds, we're also pushing and working there to change the upcoming law that is being raised by the Knesset. It's not getting any easier, and no one knows where the war is going to end.
How has your reserve service impacted the people who are important to you in your life?
People important to me in my life are concerned for me. Some of them ask me, why are you going back when I volunteer for another 2-week shift or a few-week shift? And they're always asking me how I'm doing, which is always very appreciated, but sometimes feels unnecessary if I'm in a good place and things are good, and then someone sees me and the first thing that they want to talk to me about is like, oh, how are things? How are you doing? It's like, well, I was fine, but now you're reminding me that, I'm not always fine and things aren't fine.
My wife realized that she can hang on as a single mother, and it's a very difficult thing to understand. And no parent imagines himself how would he act as a single parent. My parents and my wife's parents, they are the one to step in, and all of a sudden the role has changed from being grandparents to being parents. They're like they're taking my role. It's not only my wife, it's everyone's family are going through the same things, and this actually torn apart families of my friends, of some of my soldiers, because we're coming back from reserves duty. We're not coming the same people. It takes us time to settle in, to get back to our normal lives.
So I'd say my parents definitely have been facing a lot of additional stress that they wouldn't have been facing otherwise. I know they feel they're proud of it, but you can't help but being scared and nervous. And actually, for me, I'm less nervous and anxious here because I'm on the ground. We're trained to do our job. We're out doing missions with my guys every single night. And for us, it's normal. For my parents, especially when operations, are going long and I'm not able to talk to them, they see the news, they see a lot of the headlines, and they don't really know what's going on. So they're very nervous about all that. But they've also seen that, we have a good team, we do work, and every time it's successful so far.
Perfect. Thank you. This is great. We're good. All the questions.
Amazing.
Amazing.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. We're good. מעולה. תודה רבה. מעולה. זה מספיק.
כן, יאללה, פצצה.
ממש ממש.